Hi birding fans, Brooke here. I decided to make today's video dedicated to talking about my birding journey, with tips along the way to how to get your backyard birds to trust you, and what kinds of birds from my experience are more likely to hand feed. So let's hop into it. Birding became an interest of mine around 3 years ago. Then I saw all these people on social media hand feeding birds, and then soon I realized that I wanted to try it and see if it were even possible. Plus, I thought birds are adorable, and back then I didn't have the chickens or any other pet birds. I started trying to train birds to hand feed in the fall or winter of 2023. But it turns out it took longer than I was expecting it to happen. Here I was thinking it would take me about, a week. But it turns out that the first time I had a bird land on me was nearly a year later, in the summer of 2024. So this brings on my first tip. Have patience. Don't expect things to happen immediately. I know some videos make it look like it's just so easy. The bird comes, it flies onto someone's hand and lands, takes a seed, flies away. But it's really not that simple. So if you are really determined to do this, then you need to have the will, patience, and time to make it happen. Be ready to stand near a bird feeder or bird feeding spot a couple days a week, for at least 10 minutes for anywhere from a couple of months or even a few years. But don't let my words drag you down. I'm sure that if you are actually committed, then you will eventually get there. Surprisingly, the first bird I ever hand-fed was a downy woodpecker. Nope, not a chickadee. The funny thing was, it didn't even take a seed from my hand. It just landed on my arm and perched there. I think I was standing so still that it literally thought I was a tree. But then again, who knows? Maybe it intended on coming to my hand right after it landed on me. The strange thing is that I never hand-fed a downy woodpecker again. But this has happened to me with other birds, like blue jays and cardinals. I've hand-fed them a couple of times, but then it just left me and never came back. It's like it didn't trust me anymore. Regardless, that was the first bird I ever hand-fed, and it was a very exciting moment. Though that downy woodpecker, it was like a sign, telling me that soon I'd be able to hand-feed birds, because a week or so later, my first tufted titmouse ever landed on me. This brings me to my second tip. Which birds are the most likely to hand-feed? Well, that will depend on your area. If you live in one of the more eastern regions of North America, then chickadees and tufted titmice are the easiest to get to trust you. If you live further to the west, though, then downy woodpeckers should be one of the easiest birds to hand feed. If you live in Europe, on the other hand, then tits or robins are more likely to trust you. After the first time that the tufted titmouse landed on me, more and more started to come. I remember I got even a little too excited at times, so that I was even a little shaky. I mean, this was unreal, like a dream come true. Soon enough, chickadees started to even come very close to me, but sadly enough, not on my hand. With time, I started to become very busy so that I couldn't really go that much out and hand feed the tufted titmice. At a certain point, I stopped hand feeding them altogether. Then one day, I decided to go back outside and retry again. Sadly, though, they didn't come. Then I got busy again. And then after that, I started to have more and more time so that I started going back outside and retrying to hand feed them. Fortunately for me, it didn't take that long. But instead of tufted titmice coming to me, chickadees this time came instead. Actually, it was totally unexpected when it happened. I was just outside with a handful of seed in my hands as usual, waiting for the tufted titmice to come to me and begin trusting me again. But I put my hand up against the trunk of the mulberry tree, and instead of a tufted titmice coming to me, I opened my eyes to find that there was literally a chickadee sitting on my hand, which was hooray for me. Wow. That was such a surprise. A very good one at that. And here I was thinking the first bird to trust me would be a chickadee. But only now, after having experience with hand feeding downy woodpeckers and tufted titmice, does the first chickadee come to my hand and take a seat. And now, before I end this video, I would like to give you my third and final tip of the day. The different techniques you should use for different birds to get to trust you. Okay, let's be real. I know you might be thinking, oh, it's just so simple. You go to a bird feeder and put out your hand full of seeds and a bird will soon come to you. But for different species, this may vary. For example, ground feeders are more likely to hand feed if you put your hand close to the ground instead of just holding it high up while standing. Cardinals, for example, are more likely to feed on the ground. So you can fill up your bird feeder halfway, and once you see it's almost done, you can go outside and put your hand close to the ground, especially if you hear a cardinal nearby or some other ground feeder. Come closer to a bird feeder every day, but keep your hand close to the ground if your goal is to hand feed a ground feeder such as a cardinal, sparrow, or even dark-eyed junco. And after a while, they'll eventually come to you. Also, another thing to keep in mind is the habitat around you. Most birds are attracted to forests. So if you have one around you, you'll have more opportunities of different birds that you can hand feed. Now for birds who are not ground feeders, well, they'll be a different story. Instead of putting your hand close to the ground, you'll want to stand up for that. And lean your hand on something, like a railing of a porch or some sort of other platform. Maybe even a garden gate. Then, once you've been getting the birds to come to you on a platform, you'll eventually be able to get them to come to you in mid-air. It's just more comfortable for both you and the bird to begin with. Alright guys, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and gathered a few helpful tips to hand feeding your backyard birds. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of this kind of content, then subscribe. Bye!